Hello and many thanks for joining us. You're watching Addis News Hour with the news. I'm Tabitha John. Do stay with us. The first Ethiopian Transport Investment Summit opened in Addis Ababa this morning. Senior government officials, including President Sahle-Work Zewde, attended the opening of the two-day event. In her opening remarks, the president said that the transport and logistics sectors would play a remarkable role to bring about development in Ethiopia. Both sectors require the involvement of not only the government but also the private sector, she said, adding that the 10-year development plan of the Ministry of Transport will have a key role to modernize the transport industry. In her concluding remarks, the president called upon all stakeholders to do their part for the success of the development plan. Minister of Transport Dagmawit Moges, for her part, said the government has been undertaking broad activities to expand road infrastructure and modernize the logistics sector. African leaders must prepare themselves to properly handle the stark truth that unless the continent appropriately copes with its internal needs, it is highly likely to end up prey to external meddling. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed made the remark while addressing the Russia-Africa International Inter-Party Conference. Appreciating Russia's partnership in Africa's independence movement and fight against counterproductive interference, the chair of the Prosperity Party, Premier Abiy Ahmed, has expressed his confidence that Russia and Africa will uplift their collaboration to new heights. Shifa Raulago presents the story as follows.
In accordance with the agreements reached at the Russia-Africa Summit, and in order to prepare for the next Russia-Africa Summit, at the initiative of the United Russia Party, an international inter-party conference was held dubbed Russia-Africa Reviving Traditions. The meeting has featured the participation of over 20 parliamentary majority parties from African countries. In his address to the conference, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed said Russia has been Africa's key ally in its struggle against oppression, foreign intrusion and colonial slavery.
I want to quote an African proverb. Open quote, when there is no enemy within, the enemy outside can do you no harm. End of quote. I regret to acknowledge that we have not yet won the battle against enemies within. Chronic poverty, inequality, unemployment, identity-based politics, and violence. It is because of such enemies within that we stand vulnerable to external interference. In order to respond to the basic demands of our people, to defeat the enemies within and stand strong against interference, we must revisit our traditions and solidify our friendship and renew our time-tested solidarity.
Prime Minister Abiy has also elaborated on Ethiopia's indigenous philosophy of Madamar, or synergy, to the participants of the inter-party conference.
Madamar exemplifies coming together, working in sync, with purpose and vision for a common destiny, as our guiding light in everything we do. At a fundamental level, Madamar is a call to our nation, Africa, and its people to stay away from the dangerous cycle of always throwing away the past and starting with a clean slate to build on the accumulated wisdom of our forefathers, to take the best from our past, to invest in an understanding of our concrete problems and adapt our solutions as we go, and in the process, leave a legacy of hope to our children.
Explaining about his party, Premier Abiy says the Prosperity Party believes in economic growth, meeting the wholesome needs of humanity.
The material, the emotional, and the intellectual. Growth must be situated in a political space where one engages with the big questions of society, where one's body is nurtured and one's safety is not in question. Growth must create opportunities for individuals to express their talents and translate it to personal wins and collective improvements.
The Ethiopian Prime Minister has finally advised African leaders to open their eyes to the stark truth that unless the continent properly copes with its internal needs, it will open door to external meddling.
I wish to remind you of the uncomfortable truth that unless we respond to the internal needs of our communities, our countries, and our dear continent, we will fall prey to interference by others near and far. Africa and the Russia Federation have a tradition of questioning, challenging the status quo, and imagining new possibilities. We have a tradition of setting philosophical precedents that have helped humanity pause and wonder. Let us indeed revive those traditions.
The Premier has also expressed his confidence that the 2022 Russia-Africa Summit will provide historic platforms for lasting partnership between Africa and Russia.
Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed furiously lashes out at some government and so-called superpowers for their attempt to make his government a lackey. The Prime Minister, in his unequivocal address to the parliament, said he will choose death over the violation of his country's sovereignty. The Premier, however, commended governments who showed solidarity to the Ethiopian people and government at this trying time. Alula Teklamariam presents the following story.
Members of the parliament raised questions as to how the current status of Ethiopia's diplomatic relation is going on. Responding to their queries, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed furiously bashed those external powers who he said were trying to twist hands. Their desire to make the government a lackey emanates from their feeble understanding that Ethiopia is in a precarious situation, the Premier said. He, however, commended those who showed solidarity at this trying time.
ሶስት አይነት የውጭ ሰዎች አጋጥመውኛል
I came across three kinds of foreign groups in our current diplomacy, of whom some of them appeared to be our strong partners, which is beyond our imagination. These countries are really aware of Ethiopia's dignity, history, and its bright future. They also want to cooperate with us in our development endeavors. Ethiopia will also be by their side in case of any circumstance they may face. This darkness helped us spot out our partners. On the other hand, we witnessed countries intending to twist our hands for their political agenda. But the third force considers that it is time to destroy and divide Ethiopia. They allocate budget and seriously work on it. Finally, I want to notify that Ethiopia is a country that defeated a well-organized army in the region. No country can do this.
አንዳንዶች ከጠበቅኩት በላይ ወዳጅ አገራት
The Premier further outlined that Ethiopia will never bend the knee for any external foes planning to coil hands.
እኔ ከየትኛውም ሀገር ጋር ግጭት አልፈልግም ከየትኛውም ሀገር ጋር አታካራ አልፈልግም
I do not want any conflict with any country. My intention is not to mess with external forces. What I need is maintaining Ethiopia's prosperity in a peaceful manner. But what I want you to know is, I would rather die than allowing an external power violate Ethiopia's sovereignty. It is impossible to make things happen that way. However, we will work for mutual benefit only.
በኢትዮጵያ ክብርና ጥቅም ከመጣችሁ አንገቴ ይቀላል እንጂ
Prime Minister Abiy further said Ethiopia is always committed to collaboratively work with all countries as to the global diplomacy requires.
An East African affairs political analyst says the situation in northern Ethiopia, Tigray state, is a purely internal matter which ought to be solved by the Ethiopian government itself. The analyst Omar Reddy cautions that uninvited foreign meddling in the internal affairs of Ethiopia will only lead to chaos. Kazahun Chani has the following report.
With the significant improvement in the security situation in the region, the government has now allowed unfettered access to humanitarian actors. It has also put in place an expedited clearance system to remove the bureaucratic hurdles in securing the necessary permits to operate in the Tigray region. Given this, a political commentator on East African affairs, Umar Radi, says that the situation in northern Ethiopia in Tigray state is a purely internal matter. According to him, the interference of third parties is unacceptable, whatever pretexts they may use. Umar highlighted that following the United Nations Charter, the countries of the world rather should advocate the territorial integrity of states and respect one's own country's national sovereignty.
The UN Security Council's attempt to hold a discussion and then followed by a resolution, to issue a resolution on Ethiopia has failed. Not only on the United States, on the UN Security Council's highest level, but on technical committee level as well. In the details of that process, we have learned that China, Russia, and India asked for rewording of the statement regarding what's going on in northern Ethiopia, where the Western powers disagreed on a statement, on a wordings, which indicates that each actor involved in the conflict should be held accountable and responsible. They refused to include such a statement. This indicates they are biased from the beginning. Now, is it new for the Western powers, such as the United States and European powers led by France, UK, and in this particular case, Norway? If I got that correct, I think it's Norway spearheading the UN push. Is it new that they have tried to intervene on Ethiopian internal affairs and to twist Ethiopia's arms to make it succumb to their interests? It is not new. It has happened before, so we shouldn't be surprised.
He accentuated that illegal foreign interference in Ethiopia's internal affairs will lead only to chaos, falling living standards of people, and disregard for universally recognized human rights.
What we see from the European Union mainly is inconsistency when it comes to what is happening in northern Ethiopia and overall in Ethiopia. It is inconsistent because they have not said anything over the past 27 plus years where human rights violations, gross human rights violations have been happening almost on a daily basis in Ethiopia. This is not limited to Ethiopia. The previous regime had an extended arm that turned Somalia, South Sudan, into a chaotic war scene. They were instrumental, the previous regime and the entire government structure, particularly its security apparatus, were instrumental in creating havoc in neighboring countries, Eritrea, South Sudan, Sudan to a certain extent, and Somalia included. So they were weapons for the Western powers. So they didn't say anything. Had they been concerned for human rights violations, they could have spoken about human rights issues elsewhere in Ethiopia. What they are trying to do in northern Ethiopia is they are trying to save their partners in crime, in regional crimes. So it is a double standard. It's not about human rights. It's not about access to relief. It's not about that. It's about just forcing the Ethiopian government to accepting their terms, and at the same time trying to save this criminal clique that has been helping them do their dirty job across the region.
He also further noted that some countries of the world consistently repelled unlawful attempts to interfere from abroad in Ethiopia's internal affairs strictly.